Earn a 2.5% commission that's hundreds or even thousands of dollars when you take 2 minutes to make an introduction to Pipeline through our Ambassador program. All of the free content Pipeline brings to the engineering community, the Being an Engineer podcast, the Wave, our free online platform for engineers, and our CAD Club volunteer organization for aspiring young engineers, is possible because Pipeline exists. By making just one introduction, you can support Pipeline's core business and in so doing, support the aforementioned initiatives we provide that enrich the entire engineering community. Start making an impact today at teampipeline.us/ambassador. That's teampipeline.us/ambassador.
Like anything, you don't have to be the expert, but it's really good if you know enough to talk to the expert and get that answer.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we're speaking with Roger Labrecque, and he is a distinguished field in the field of medical device innovation. Roger boasts an impressive career marked by his deep passion for addressing unmet needs in healthcare. With a rich portfolio of over 20 patents, he's recognized for his innovative thinking and expertise in product development, from ideation through commercialization. Roger's leadership extends beyond technical skills, as he is known for fostering robust collaboration across cross-functional teams and incorporating critical insights through the voice of the customer process. Roger, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Well, tell me, what made you decide to become an engineer?
Well, I guess it really started with my family. Growing up when I was a little kid, my grandfather, I remember going to his house, and, kind of shows how old I am. He had a treadmill, and they didn't have motors back then, and he rigged his up with a motor. And I remember kind of looking at it and seeing, hey, what's going on here? You're taking away all the exercise. I didn't know the first thing about it, but he rigged these things up and going in his basement. And he used to cut rocks, and he had all these rock cutting tools. He'd go out and find them and cut them, and he had everything, just done how you wouldn't think. Very creative ways of handling things. So, I really kind of got, say, hey, I like solving problems. And then my dad was an engineer. He was in the Air Force. He designed some a reinforcement system for the uniform, so they could fly in with the helicopter and attach it and fly away with them. So I was really interested in that sort of thing. Then my sister went to school for plastics engineering, and she kind of got me into it. She's talking about it all the time. We're talking about biodegradable polymers and things like that. So that got me interested, and I said, all right, I think this might be for me.
That and Legos are probably the two most common answers I hear. Something about family influence, or I loved building Legos when I was growing up, or both.
No, I do like Legos.
Oh, here's a question. When you built Legos, did you often get the kit, right? There's whatever kit it is for a specific build, and stick to the kits for the most part? Or would you just have a giant bin full of random Legos from different kits, and you would more often than not take from the bin and build your own contraptions?
I think it's a little bit of both. A lot of the, when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of the kits. We just had, a pile of Legos.
Yeah.
But now, as I help my son build his Legos and, play with them, I kind of look at the pictures and, just kind of build it, and it doesn't work. So you go back and read the instructions. So I don't need the instructions. But.
I'm not sure if that's a male thing or an engineer thing. I don't need the instructions.
That's how it goes, though, right? I don't think I'm alone in that.
Nope. All right. Well, you've been in medical devices for quite a while now. How did you first get into medical devices? What was your journey like getting into that field?
Okay. It's kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. Started off in grad school. I did my master's in plastics engineering, and I got focus on biodegradable polymers. So naturally, I was looking at that, and that led me to drug delivery. So I started off at a small company called unmet, working on female urinary incontinence devices, and I was compounding different materials and working with different devices. And I really liked it. I felt like I was really doing something. And then when I got out and graduated, I got my job at Atrium, and they were looking to start up a drug delivery group, but not quite yet. They wanted to do it in about 2 years from when I started. So they put me in working with PTFE, expanded PTFE, so basically Teflon material. So I went and I started working with that. And, the process development, they just threw me on the floor and they said, shadow for my first 2 weeks there. Learn the process. And me coming out of plastics engineering, I thought, all right, I know extrusion, but, I don't know PTFE extrusion. It's a completely different animal. It doesn't process really like any other plastic material that you'd expect. So I had a lot to learn there. So I learned a lot about the different processing, and I was working on vascular grafts at the time. So there was a lot to, you think that they're just dumb tubes, right? That's how they're really described. But there's a lot to do with the different morphologies, the microstructures, the strength, the radial, the longitudinal, the suture retention. There's a real lot of things that go into the development and the healing of them. And, there's so many things. So I really enjoyed that. And after about 2 years, we started the drug delivery group, and I was the first one in there. And started working for about 6 months. Then we hired a PhD scientist. My friend Jeff Moody, he ended up being, one of my closest friends. And what I realized is that this guy is super smart guy, and learned a real lot from him. And here I am with the experience with the PTFE, and this guy comes in and like, all right, I know what I'm doing. But then, I was a kid, I was young. And then I realized, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. I can learn a lot from him. And that was really an eye-opening experience for me. And, you don't have to be too smart to realize you can learn something from a PhD, but I did that. And, he taught me things like cell culture, preclinical testing, aseptic technique, biocompatibility, tox testing, a lot of stuff that I really didn't have a lot of experience in. So I think that was a really great experience for me, learning, starting that drug delivery group from the startup, hiring him. We hired some more people, and we really worked on it together. Then now we have this drug delivery group, and how are we going to test these things? So we had to start up the analytical group. Same sort of situation where we already had a DSC and FTIR, a few, basic methods. But then I had to go out and buy HPLC, a viscometer, rheometer. We found some vendors to do some outside testing, such as NMR, SEM, the atomic absorption, things like that. Then it was time to hire our next PhD, and we hired this guy named Keith Fauché, really, really smart guy again. I learned a tremendous amount from this guy, and years later, I went on to report to him. He's a great manager. All along, same type of story. He taught me a lot about the analytical side of things, and he had a really good knack for managing. I think for me, I really learned from him. It starts with being a good person, right? Treat people right, and they're going to work hard for you. So it's really not rocket science. So that was great. Now all this biodegradable stuff and these two really groups that I was involved in, that led into a team where we developed a drug-eluting coronary stent. So with that, I was responsible for the formulation of these devices, of the coatings. It was an oil-based coating at the time, and the applicators to get uniform amounts of coating and drug on these stents. And then we went all the way up to human clinicals. But one of the fun things on the way there, for the preclinical, we do a lot of the animal testing in the pigs, and I went all over doing that sort of thing. And funny story, we're up in Canada, and one of the guys that does the implants, he blew out his knee playing hockey, so he couldn't stand. So he's still there, his leg's in a brace, but he can't do the implant. So there's one guy trying to do it all by himself. So I'm like, hey, let me help you. This is crazy. One person trying to do all of this. So they said, well, we don't really normally have sponsors do this. I'm like, that's all right. Don't worry. This is not my first time up here. So I actually got to scrub into the case, and I got to, push the catheters up the pig and, deploy the stents in their heart. I mean, this is great. I had blood on my hands. It was a pretty amazing experience. To really be in there. And as an engineer, you don't always get an opportunity to do something like that. So that was really a great great experience. We had a really small but hardworking team, and there was lots of great experiences from there. From there, I went to, thoracic drainage catheter project. Then I went on to a biosurgery group working on hernia mesh. I think the hernia mesh actually was great for me because it was completely new. I was working on vascular, endovascular, and now I got biosurgery. There's different tools, there's different applications. It's, a laparoscopic type of surgery. So I had to learn a lot of different things. We used a lot of chemistry we're making barrier layers in the mesh. So I got really deep into the chemistry on this, in how it's going to go to the design, some reactive chemistry in there. So it was actually really, really interesting. So that was a great opportunity. And then things really changed. That's when we got hit with remediation. And everyone says, oh, remediation, this is terrible, especially for a guy like me that's into, being creative and innovation. But it ended up actually being a great stop in my career. It was about 6 to 7 years, and you're probably thinking 6 to 7 years of remediation, that is absolutely crazy.
For those people who don't know what remediation is, can you explain that, please?
Yeah, so that's basically when you have a quality management system, right? And the FDA comes in, get an inspection, you get maybe a 483, a consent decree, something like that, where you get a finding by the FDA and said, you know what, your quality system's not up to par. You need to do something. You need to remediate this. You need to fix it. For us, it happened after an acquisition. We were acquired by our larger company, and then all of a sudden now the microscope is on us now because we're part of a bigger corporation. Before we were the little guys. So there was no microscope like that on us, and everything was great. As I'm learning, that's not all that uncommon. So with this remediation, my first project in there had to fix all the design history files. And I said, wow, we've got 16 commercially released projects. So that's 16 products I've got to do. So we built a team, and anyone that's familiar with remediation, reporting structure kind of goes out the window. So you lead a team, and the people that are on the team are on the team. And yeah, you still have your manager off in another section of the building, but people are all kind of jumbled based on the needs of the business. And it's really all hands on deck. And there's a lot of, we brought in consultants, we brought in a lot of co-op students, interns, things like that, whatever we could leverage. So I did the design history files. And for this, it was actually a pretty amazing experience because it was like doing product development in fast forward. So like I said, we did 16 different products, and we did them over the course of maybe 2 years. So now that's everything from, setting up a structure for this design history file, an electronic structure, so it would be easily searchable in audits. With the revision histories, how are you going to do this? So I think it was huge for me in terms of collaboration. We got really close with made friends in document control. I think, because we worked so closely, we couldn't have done it without them. Then we are really collaborating with the design verification validation teams, process validation teams, quality, regulatory, the internal auditors, manufacturing, all the people that are going to be responsible for these documents to actually get them. We had to work with those people, and we're a lot more than just librarians in this. We're really bringing this all together and working to figure out what the requirements are going to be, writing the procedures. I actually printed out a copy of the 21 CFR 820, the regulations, and I would have it by my bed at night, and I'd read it and highlight. And it's kind of crazy because, what I didn't realize is these regulations, they're not procedures, they're guidelines, and you write your procedures based on these guidelines. So as long as you're compliant, you can write down whatever you want. So we're able actually to go and write these procedures and find something that'll work for us. So there's a lot of collaboration in this because there's a lot of stakeholders. And so I got to work really closely with a lot of these different cross-functional teams here. So it was a great experience for me, even though you think, design history file, that's pretty dry work. And you know what? Yeah, it is. But when you you put the spin on it and make the best out of it, I think our team was about 12 people. So there's a lot of work that we had to do. And really to learn, that's where I really first started to learn how to be a leader, a manager type of thing there. I had managed people, but, that was my first experience with a group of over, say, 10 people. And I thought it was great because when you're starting off with something that is really, you have to put a spin on it, right? You have to say, hey, we're going to learn. This is going to be great. Look what we're getting out of this. And you start believing it. And then all of a sudden everyone believes it. Like, you know what? That's true. We are learning something. So it was a great experience there. Then I think they might have liked what I did on that project. So they gave me drawing review next. And I think, drawing review, what's this? And my instruction in that, well, I'll figure it out, make our drawings compliant. Like, all right, this can't be anything. Well, this one turned into a lot more than I ever would have expected, and more than I think a lot of people would expect, because we had over 1,000 drawings. And this team grew. I mean, we had at sometimes up to 50 people touching this project on various aspects of this team. So the first thing I did is, I said, this is really big. I'm going to go down and interview all the stakeholders. Went around for, obviously SQE, because with a drawing, you're going to be ordering the parts. Quality, when you're looking at from a quality point of view, you've got to, your risk analysis and, all right, what properties based on our DFMA or DFMA, whatever you're using, how do you have to line it up and make sure you have appropriate testing for the quality on this? So I think that was really, really important for me to look at that. And then there's regulatory say, or what's your particulate specification going to be in this? What is your material controls, for changing materials from the vendor point of view? There's just so many different things that it touched. The CAD group, this is such a large project. I needed essentially a right-hand man. So, I reached out to my friend Mark, who's the head of the CAD group, and said, hey, let's do this together. So I brought him into it. It kind of goes back to the whole thing everyone's talking about, always keep a strong network, right? This guy, I tapped on his shoulder because I knew he was a really good guy, and he was smart and he's hardworking, and I knew he could bring value to the team because I knew him. Interviewing something like someone with a CAD background for a project like this, like, yeah, it's drawings, but you wouldn't necessarily look to pull someone like that in. So I think as I'm thinking about this, that was really because I had experience with them. That's really the heart of networking. So I think maybe I'll come back to that in a little bit. But tying all these people together and really working with all these cross-functional teams, I think when it's a team of, upwards of 50 people that I'm responsible for this project for, it really teaches how to lead, and saying that, you know what, you can't do this alone. No one can do this alone. And you have to say, all right, bring people along, identify people that can, work on these subgroups, and, give them the outline of what they need to do, and really keep them motivated, and give people that are working on their part of the projects, and just, let them know that you're there for support, but, give them the chance to fail, but also the opportunity to succeed. And I think that's what I really learned from such a large project like this.
Let me ask you a question there. I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is something I've been thinking about lately is how long of a leash do you give engineers to fail? To what degree do we allow engineers to fail before saying, pretty sure this is not going to work and we can't make this a science project. We're in a business. We need to be profitable. We can't just spend unlimited amounts of time on this. Do you have a philosophy that you follow for guiding the answer to that question?
So, I think you're very, very right with this whole, science experiment, because it'll always, not always, but for a lot of times you're going to default there. They always say, give him enough rope to hang himself with, but don't actually let him do it. Right. So there's going to be a safety net. And, I think the key to anything like this is communication, right? So if you give them the tools, and it's not to the level of micromanaging, communicate. Let's talk about it. Hey, I haven't done this before. Let me run it by you. This is what I'm thinking. All right, this makes a lot of sense. Let's do it. Right? People are going to make mistakes, because honestly, if people don't make mistakes, they don't grow. So you can't just prescribe everything for people to do all the time, or they're never going to get any better. You hope they make the small mistakes. You hope they learn from other people's mistakes. Give them opportunities. When other people make mistakes, not saying we point it out, but we discuss it, right? And then one of the person on my team make a mistake. How could we have done this? I mean, this is why people do postmortems, right? When things go great, it's great. When they didn't go great, all right, let's talk about what we can do better next time. I think it's pretty basic. So that's really my philosophy on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working on basically a flow chart, a decision chart for when you should ask for help early, help or guidance, however you want to say it, versus when you should really plow through it on your own and strengthen that muscle of figuring stuff out by yourself. And I think there are a couple of important questions. One is that is this thing we're trying to do really, truly important for our company, or it's just a small part of something that is important to the company, but this item directly is really not that relevant. If it's not directly very relevant to the company, I would consider asking for help early. Another question that I would ask is the answer to this already known? And readily available, right? Because probably someone in the world knows the answer to most things that we're doing, but is the answer known and readily available to me? And if the answer is yes, then I would also consider asking for help early rather than spinning my own wheels on it. And then the third one is this something, is this a one-time problem or is this a recurring problem? And if it's just a one-time problem, then I might ask for help early. But if it's a recurring problem, something I'm going to have to figure out this type of problem many times in the future, then I probably want to spend the time myself to learn that answer so that I build that muscle and can do it more effectively in the future. Anyway, those are a few questions that I've been kind of trying to put together this flow chart to use with my own team of how to know when to ask for help early versus spending the time on your own to figure things out.
Yeah. So I think from my point of view, I'm trying my best to talk slow. I talk really fast. And you probably know that from last time we talked. But I'm concentrating on trying to talk a little bit slow today. So I don't like to waste time, right? So for me, I would just ask. I mean, it doesn't hurt. And for people on my team, what I'll do is I'll help them with strategy. I won't necessarily give them the answer. Say, this is how I'd approach the strategy. Let me see what you find out, right? And you kind of coach them and get them to learn, and you talk about it on the way. So that's been my approach. And I think people, they like to have the support there, but they also like the feeling of accomplishment. So it's kind of a mix there. Honestly, it depends on the person you're working with, right? When I first started managing, what I would tell people is I bring them in my office and say, I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to manage you wrong. And they'd look at me and say, what are you talking about? You're going to manage me wrong. I said, let me clear this up. I'm going to start by one of two things. I'm going to manage you exactly as I would like to be managed, or I'm going to try to put you a profile in someone I've managed before, and I'm going to manage you like I think that person would want to be managed. That's my only 2 points of reference. As we go, I know that neither one of those are going to be right for you. I know that we're going to have to adjust to what you respond to and, what works well for you, what works well for me in this relationship. And I'm going to adjust from there. So every person's going to be different. So you can't really have a one size fits all in this. So I think it's the same when you're teaching someone. Everyone learns different. I've managed a lot of people, work with a lot of people with their learning styles are absolutely crazy different. And you know what? Like anything else, you leverage their strengths and you put them in a position to succeed.
You mentioned that people want to feel like they've accomplished something, which sure, that makes sense, right? I think no one would disagree with that. I heard a really interesting story a little while ago. I think it was in a book I read about that, the importance of that feeling of accomplishment. And it was in the context of there's a specific name for it. I don't think I can remember it off the top of my head, but it's cake mix. You know, the cake mix that you buy at the grocery store, you come home and you add a few things, put it in the oven, and voila, you've got a cake. Well, apparently in the early days, before cake mix was a thing, when you had to put all the ingredients together yourself, right, from scratch, when cake mix first came out, all you had to do was add water, and that was it. It was very, very simple. And it didn't sell that well. And what they learned was that the folks at the time, predominantly housewives who were making these cakes, what they learned was that it was too easy for them, and they didn't feel like they had accomplished anything. And so what the executives did at these companies that were making cake mix is they just added one more ingredient that you had to add yourself to the mix. So now it's water and eggs. And that's it. That was the only change they made, but it was apparently enough to where these housewives now felt like they were accomplishing something. There was enough for them to do that they felt accomplished, and sales took off, and cake mix is just everywhere now. But there's probably a good analogy there, right? We need to allow enough for the especially the younger engineers to learn and feel accomplished, but not so much that it takes so long, like baking a cake completely from scratch, right?
Yeah. So you're telling the story, and here I am giggling, right? Because, when I make pancakes, I don't buy the box. I make it from scratch every time. And
nice.
It's like,
okay.
I want to make them how I want to make them. And I want to put my chocolate chips in, and I want to put my vanilla. I want to put the things that I want to put in. Right.
Yeah.
So I completely relate to that. So that's great.
That is so funny. Well, let me take a very short break here and share with everyone listening that Pipeline Design and Engineering, my company, is where you can go to get help with developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures supplemented or complemented with product design and R&D. You can visit us at teampipeline.us to learn more, and we would love to hear from you. So now back to our conversation with Roger. So Roger, you have, let's talk about patents. You have over 20 patents to your name, which is quite a lot. What is your, I don't know if you would call it a strategy really, but how did you get your name on so many patents? And do you have any, I don't know, pro tips that you can share with the listeners about how to go about having your name on a patent?
Yeah. I think for me, it's understanding the problem, right? And you want to understand what the problem actually is that you're trying to solve, and that goes back to communication, collaboration, right? What I will, typically do, I'll find the unmet needs, and I'll talk to people on the team and say, all right, hey, the doctors are having a problem with this. What can we do to solve this? Put it up on the whiteboard and, get people excited about it. We'll be drawing and, really try to spark the creativity in these people. Sometimes you can borrow from another procedure, maybe another industry. With vascular, endovascular, you're taking a tube, right? You're putting something small in a small hole. You're snaking it down the body. So whether you're doing putting in a stent, or if it's like an endoscope or anything like that, the principles are really very similar. So you can take things, you can scale them down, make them go left instead of right. So there's all different type of things you can do. Maybe look at what the competitors are in that space, understand what they're doing, look at their IP. I think as you read and you learn, it's really, things just kind of come, like, oh, I've got a better solution for that. I guess one example of this is when I was leading the graft team after I did all the remediation. Very last minute, I was invited to there was an endovascular surgeon he was giving a talk, in the main conference room. So at the last minute, my boss says, hey, come on, you want to join us? So, all right, let's go. And so he's giving this talk and telling us about this endovascular thing that I really hadn't seen a lot about at the time, and the approach that these other people are using to do it. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do it that way? And so I got a much better way to do that. And so I grabbed my friend Dave, who is great at FEA. I said, hey, I got an idea for a stent design. What do you think about this? And I ran it by him. And, went home. I cut things out on paper, stent design, and I took paper towel rolls and, kind of made prototypes with that, maybe used some clay. He went, did some FEA. And this was on a Friday afternoon. And by Monday morning, we had a working model, and then we ran it by.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we ran it by our product management team, and we said, "Hey, well, what do you think about this?" And I think marketing, product management, and in the engineering innovation, I mean, some people try to split those up. I don't know how you do. I mean, that were my biggest resource. It's funny, even like to this day, I've since decided to leave my company. But when I'm looking at, who are the people that I really connected with and that I still talk to very frequently, like most of my good friends are from product management. Like that doesn't make any sense for an engineer. But those are people I work with. They put me in front of the doctors and they gave me these opportunities. And so when you're working with people and you're able to work together with them, I think that's really, really good. Another thing for the patents, you really got to take off the handcuffs and, everything's in play. One of the really good examples is, I was meeting with a doctor years ago and we were talking about a device he had. And one of the things he really stuck out to me, and he said, blood does not see angles, right? So people develop these designs, right? And they're thinking, hey, it has to look like your anatomy. Look, then he says, no, it doesn't. Well, blood doesn't know what angle. It doesn't know anything but shear, right? Build your device to maximize what the blood sees, not what you think it needs to see, right? And so now all of a sudden you look at a problem completely different. So when you really step back and you take these handcuffs off and you don't look at it like everyone expects you to look at it, things just pop out, and it really makes it, really a lot easier. And then when you kind of, I keep on going to the collaboration. I'm really huge on that. So, you build a relationship. So in terms of the IP, working with the patent attorneys, I've worked so much with patent attorneys and I've gotten to learn a lot about these things, the different claim language, how to look for prior art and how to really understand what you're trying to patent there. And, for instance, I just filed 2 patents on stent designs. That's a minefield. Really tough to file patents in that area. There's just so much. But because I collaborated with the attorneys, I kind of knew what to do, and I kept them in really close communication. Say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? And it was really, really helpful. And I mean, like anything, you don't have to be the expert, but it's really good if you know enough to talk to the expert and get that answer. And I think that's really the big, it's leveraging all of your tools really. And, just keep on learning and you'll always be able to apply that somewhere.
That's great. You don't need to be the expert, but you need to know enough to ask the expert.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes with anything. That's not just patents. That's VOC. That's everything.
You mentioned the ability to look at a problem differently than maybe most people would expect you to look at it.
Yeah.
Have you found any strategies over the years to, like, any tactical approaches to doing that?
Well, it's maybe not a tactable. One really good observation I think that I've come across is when you're in innovation, and I told my team this, when you get on a creative thread, you cannot turn that on and turn that off, right? So I tell them, like, sometimes I'll get a thought at, 11 o'clock at night and I'm in bed and I'm watching YouTube videos of surgeries and all of a sudden, like, all right, I can't sleep unless I write this. I just keep on researching. The next thing I know, the sun's coming up, right? And because you can't turn this off and on. So I would always tell my team, if you're going, don't think you have to come in at 8 o'clock the next morning. Just shoot me a text, right? Just let me know. And then, come in at 2 o'clock. Don't come in. Just when you have that thing, just harness it and go for it because, it's kind of like the opposite of writer's block, right? Once you have something going, once it starts pouring, the ideas, it's, you don't want to turn them off, right?
I love that.
And you just run with it and I think it goes to like really loving what you're doing and jumping in with both feet. And I think It's so funny. I would describe my job that I had when I was leading the innovation team. It was the absolute best job in the world for me. There are many people that would absolutely hate it because, the so much uncertainty and, there's some people they like structure and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people operate better than there. For me, I enjoy the chaos. I like to have a lot of things. I like always having a backup plan. I like, this is what really lights me up.
I agree. Yeah, I'm the same way.
And I built my team with like-minded people. I mean, obviously different experiences, different strengths, but I think you just build people with people that have that fire in them.
And I think that really resonates with folks who do well in the R&D space of engineering. There's like sustaining engineering. I think that's the group. Sustaining engineering or quality control. That's the group that really thrives on order, stability. And then you have kind of on the other end of the spectrum, the R&D engineers or the process development engineers, where you just have a blank sheet of paper and you need to figure something out. And there's all this chaos and a mess, and gradually over time it becomes cleaner and more orderly until you have, okay, here's the thing, right? Here's the product, here's the process, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both very different, but both extremely important. So
yeah,
there's people have different, like I said earlier, putting people in the to maximize their skill sets to help them be successful. There's no shame in doing research. There's no shame in doing sustaining. It's what, hey, you're contributing, and whatever your skill set is, if you like doing it, go ahead. Right?
Love it. Yep, love it. Well, you're I guess freelancing right now. Is that the way you describe what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I think I decided
freelancing.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of consulting right now. So what I did is, I had a great run at Getinga, absolutely loved it over there. I can't say enough great things about that place. But when things, I filled the product pipeline, and now my responsibilities were changing, and it's going to take however many years to get these last innovations out, and I didn't want to develop something for the shelf. So I said, you know what? Now's a great time. Let me go see what else is out there for me. And I've been networking. Man, it's been great. I've met so many great people. And I think for me, I've really approached it as I'm looking to make really solid connections. I'm almost to the point of saying, hey, I'm looking to make friends, right? And I think this has been great for me because now people are really connecting me. I'm getting to learn what I really want to do. And, now the consulting has started. People are saying, hey, we feel like you can really help us here. And so, all right, let's talk. And, I think the biggest thing is always just having these conversations and being willing to help and just being honest with yourself and be kind of true to who you are. I mean, I remember our first conversation. I thought it was great. We connected to a 30-minute call, and, we really, just got along, and we had a lot to talk about. And, I connected you with my friend Will. And so I think that was great. I think that it could be a good connection for both of you. And then you asked me to be on the podcast. And I felt like, hey, this is a guy that, I'm going to talk to you probably 2-3 years from now. You're still going to know who I am. I'm going to know who you are, and I'll feel comfortable reaching out to you. And, just, I had an injury a couple of weeks ago, and you reach out to me out of nowhere, just say, hey, how you doing? Just on a personal level. Right. And I thought that was great. And just kind of trying to build connections like that with everybody that I talk to. For me, it's been absolutely amazing. I've met so many great people, and now I've got all these opportunities in front of me, and I'm talking, and I want to make sure that I'm going to do what is right for me. But yeah, I think for me, it's been great.
That is just terrific. I'm so happy to hear that things are going as well as they are for you. That's amazing. I think that networking is something that many engineers don't do very well because, generally speaking, we're largely introverts and maybe don't enjoy getting out of our own shells and meeting new people. I know that's the case for me. I love being in a quiet room by myself. That's my happy place. But I also have learned how to talk to other people and get to know people. I'm curious, how have you been doing your networking? What advice can you share for engineers listening about how to do effective networking?
Yeah. All right. So, for me, it's really understand what your goals are, right? For me, if you're true to yourself and you're really authentic, people see that comes through. And if you say, "Hey, I'm looking to learn from you," people love to teach, right? And they love to help people. Like people ask me, like, "Hey, I'm looking for some advice." Of course, I'm going to sit there and give it to them, or I'll help them out. And I ask the same things. And when you approach it that way, and if you say, "Hey, I need help finding work, I need a job," I mean, for me, that's not the right way to do it. Because for one thing, it makes me feel really awkward because I'm kind of the introvert too when I don't know people. Once I get to know people, I'm a lot more open. And the other thing is, once there's money on the line, I'm a completely different person because I'm not going to go and talk to people unsolicited. But if my job requires me to do that, all right, well, yeah. Or if I'm looking for a consulting thing and yeah, that's how I'm going to get paid. Yeah, I'm going to have that conversation. And you kind of have to just get through it. And yeah, it's not easy, but when you approach it as, "Hey, I'm just making friends," and people tell me that I'm doing too much networking and you're overextending yourself, and because sometimes I'll have 2, 3, I've had up to 5 networking meetings in a day, and so for that, I say, "What do you mean overdo it? Would you be saying the same thing to me if I went down to the dog park and I sat on a bench and I talked to 5 different people, each for an hour or half an hour?" No, you'd say, "Hey, you just had a great afternoon, right?" And dog was playing, it was great. So I think when you approach it as just making friends and really learning, the biggest thing for me is always offer something, right? And whether it's, "Hey, what can I do to help you?" You with Pipeline, I'm like, "All right, you're looking for who do I send in your direction as I'm networking? People that are looking for, so all right, test fixtures, automation, things like that." Now I know I come across someone that say, "Hey, I really need this done." "Hey, I got a friend, Aaron. Why don't you go talk to Pipeline?" Now I'm offering something to you. Or if I make a connection, or maybe I say, "Hey, there's this great podcast called Being an Engineer. You should listen," right? All right, this is great. Now I gave them something. You got to realize that you're going to scratch a lot more backs than, the times that you get your back scratched. And that's okay because it feels good to help people. So
I agree. Yeah, it does feel very good to help people. It's one of my favorite things to do. And the joy that sparks is very significant for me anyway.
Me too.
A question I had for you was surrounding this idea of community, especially in the context of engineering. So you're doing a lot of networking right now. I imagine LinkedIn is one of the tools that you're using. I know that's been pretty effective for me as far as networking with engineers. Have you found any other communities of engineers that you can approach and use to network and get to know other engineers?
Yeah, well, there's LinkedIn. I use that quite a bit. But what I do is, if you meet one person, then say, "Hey, have a great conversation. Do you have any friends, like other people that I can learn from?" And, a lot of people they're willing to introduce you to your friends if they know that you're not going to be a haunt, right? If you say, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to help you," and, we'll help each other. Hey, it's a great connection for me. It's a great connection for you. I think we both benefited of our conversation. I'm sure that I would be willing to introduce you to people. You'd be willing to introduce me to people. So I think for me, it's grown there. You meet one person that turns into, 2 of their friends. And then each one of those, maybe one turns into one turns into 3. And then it kind of grows from there. The other thing is there's so many networking events that you can go in live, depending on what you want to do. There's all sorts of things. There's just no shortage. I'm in the Boston area. There's so much. You just
Nice.
have to go out and look there.
Yeah. We went to MD&M last year. That's medical device and manufacturing, I think is what it stands for. Anyway, it's a huge trade show. Lots more than just MD&M there. That's a great place to meet people. Only once a year, but there are other trade shows as well throughout the year.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. I've been to the one in Anaheim and the one in New York as well. So the Anaheim one is crazy how large that is.
Gigantic. Yeah. Yep. It takes 3 days just to walk the whole floor.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, let's see. I think maybe just one or two more questions and we'll wrap things up here. It's crazy. It's been 45 minutes already. Just the time is flying right now. I'm loving this conversation with you,
Yeah, I
Roger.
talk a lot sometimes, right? So
No, I'm surprised that much time has gone past already. What is one thing that you've done to accelerate the speed of engineering, either for yourself or for your team? And when I say that, let me clarify that I'm not suggesting ways to just make people work faster, because that's not a sustainable thing, or work more hours, right? Do what you're doing, but do it faster. That's not what I'm talking about. But any tools or strategies that you've found useful in just accelerating that pace?
So I have something that really stands out for me for this question. So for this, when you talk about innovation, you look at early stage feasibility as part of innovation, right? And what we did is we pulled that completely out of the quality system. So, everything with the understanding that everything that we do is going to have to be repeated, which is fine, right? So let's say that, it takes, 10 days to run through something within the quality management system, but it only takes 1 day to do it outside, right? All right. So now in 20 days, you can either run 2 things through the QMS, or you can run 10 things and then pick the one that works and run it through the second 10 days. And then, where are you going to put your money? I mean, you kind of look at it, in the terms of, bugs, right? How fast they evolve, because, their life cycle is so short, right? And then they just keep, how many generations of bugs are there going to be in your or my lifetime? A lot, right? So, when I was younger, everyone's saying how successful bugs are and successful species and all that. I'm like, you're crazy. They only live a day. How can you call that successful? But when you kind of think about it, if something really happens in the world, and who's going to be more successful, the mosquitoes or the Galapagos turtles, right? In 1,000 years, let's say the sea levels go up by 20 feet, right? All these Galapagos turtles, they're going to drown because there's only been 2 generations of them, right? But the mosquitoes, they're probably going to find a way, right? So same thing with the research in really going fast. I think that's a huge thing for me. That's really done for accelerating. And you're looking for any opportunity that you can do something like that.
That's a terrific one. So let me restate that and make sure I understand what you're saying. I think I do. Is that within the quality system, especially for very early stage work, R&D stuff, you're trying to move fast. You're going to fail a lot because that is just an inherent part of R&D. So why burden yourself with all the paperwork and I'll just call it the bureaucracy? Obviously, we want something to be of a high quality, and it's especially important for medical devices. So these controls are in place for a reason. But why burden yourself with all of that when you know that you're going to be failing a lot, right? So step out of that system and just go 100%, right? Try things, fail a lot. And then once you have a process that works or a product that works, you're happy with the R&D, the output of that R&D phase. Then, like you said, you're going to have to redo it because now you have to work within a quality system. But you've saved so much time avoiding, the myriad paperwork that goes along with failing and trying something new. And now you only have to go through that paperwork once with the thing that works. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so now you just so many more iterations, and you get to try so many more things, and you can just really accelerate your things. And this goes for not only the prototypes, but also the test methods. You know what? I don't care. I don't need a validated test method for my feasibility. Let me just do a control. Let me make sure it's working, good enough, and let's run. And then once we figure out if it works, all right, let's validate the test method. Let's, put everything in the QMS and let's do it right. But, we'll have very high confidence it's going to pass.
That's terrific. In your experience, do many teams work that way, or have most teams you've worked with in the past run everything through the quality system, even in the beginning?
I mean, it all depends where you're working on what you're doing and what you're working on. So I think, you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers type of thing. For me, that's what I found very effective to work for us, because we did want to innovate really fast, and we wanted to work different product lines and, a lot of balls in the air type of thing. And let's run. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. That could easily save you weeks or even months, depending on what you're working on.
Absolutely.
Okay. One more, specifically within the context of engineering. What is one thing that frustrates you and also one thing that brings you joy?
All right. So the frustrating, that's an easy one. That's when you have people with these egos, right? Or, people slowing down things for no good reason. They stand in the way of the progress, just for the sake of being heard. And it's not even for patient safety. I think that really, really kind of drives me crazy. And, to the point where one of my interview questions that I'll typically ask people is say, what makes you angry? And so it's a very similar question to what you're saying. People they're all, they kind of caught off guard. I guess not anymore if you listen to this podcast, but, what do you mean what it makes me angry? But some people will give the craziest answers. I had a guy tell me, well, you and I might not agree. And like, well, wait a minute. This is not what I'm talking about. What really makes you angry when you're at work? And you can see the people that are really have this drive and they want to get things done and they really want to push these products forward and do it the right way. And there's people getting in the way for no good reason. Now, if it's a quality or regulatory, absolutely put the brakes on, protect me from me. Absolutely. But when it's for no good reason, that's really frustrating. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. And then the thing that brings me joy, it's got to be team success. I love when we set a goal, the entire team can contribute to it. And it's really a team thing because when everyone's involved, it's that much better. I've got a really good example. I coach my sons pretty much every team that he's on. I always try to coach. You learn a lot from that. We can get into that another time. But this is basketball season and there's this little kid that doesn't really get a lot of opportunities, right? And we're in the playoffs last weekend and we're getting destroyed. We're down 20 points, right? And there's no way we're coming back. And, my son's got the ball and he passes us to this little guy and the kid hits the outside shot. The whole gym absolutely exploded. And my son is pumping his fist and all the kids are jumping up and down. And it's like, it's amazing the strength that teamwork has. And you kind of see it there with these little kids and, all the parents, like even the other team, they're all jumping off the benches and us coaches are all standing up. And I mean, it's when you have everybody from a team contributing, it really elevates the level of the team. And I think everyone loves to see that. And so for me, that's what I really enjoy. That really brings me joy in this is the team success.
No, what a special moment. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, you see that sort of thing all the time, but it's one example that happened this weekend. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. Well, Roger, what a delight this has been. Thank you so much for all the knowledge and insight that you have shared. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you feel is very important to share with the listeners that we haven't talked about yet?
Honestly, one of the biggest things that has made the biggest difference in my career as becoming a leader is just take the opportunity. I mentioned coaching. I think what really changed my outlook on leadership is when you coach your kids' teams or you volunteer. Now all of a sudden you're in a leadership position where you can fail. I mean, because you're only responsible to these little 8-year-old kids is that they have a smile on their face and they want to play next year, right? And that's if anyone tells you there's any other responsibility, I think, from my opinion, they're wrong. That is the number one and only thing you need to do. And then if you want to win some games, have some fun. Yeah, let's have some fun. Let's try to win some games, right? As you do this, you learn that people in general have the same tendencies, right? And you can see them really, really far out with a little kid, 8, 10, 12 years old, you can see it. Now you go to these, 8th, 9th graders and the same tendencies are there. Maybe they're a little bit tighter. Then you look at the co-op students, same things. It's even more tight, but then you get to the engineer, senior, principal, and it's all the same things. But if you know what to look for, in these behaviors, you see them and you can see what people are doing because you've seen it at an extreme with these little kids. And I never really expected that, but that helped me understand and, hey, what are people doing and how do I approach a situation? How do I deal with this kid? Because I can afford to mess up, right, with the kid because they're not going to get mad at me. It's like, all right, well, hey, we're just trying to win a game, whatever. And I'm my number one thing is keep a smile on that kid's face, but you learn, right? And that's really how I developed a lot of leadership skills. I never would have thought that. No one ever told me that. And I kind of stumbled across, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So
great secret there. Love it.
Yeah, I tell people, if you ever have the opportunity to coach your kids' team, the answer is always yes, because you don't need to know the sport. You need to know the kids, and you can learn the sport.
There's a quote right there.
Yeah. Don't
need to know the sport. You need to know the kid. Love it. Terrific.
That's all it is.
That is a wisdom bomb right there, Roger.
Right.
Thank you. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'd say definitely you can find me on LinkedIn. I'd say the one thing is don't just add me, because honestly, people that just add me, I'm probably not going to accept. I'm going to want to have a conversation, and it might take a little bit to connect. But I think for me, just adding someone on LinkedIn provides little to no value, right? But if we have a conversation, we connect, and we learned out how I might be able to help you, how you might be able to help me, what we look out for each other in the future. Now it's an actual resource. So definitely that's the best way to get me. And, I like I say, it might take a little bit of time for us to connect, but, I'm always open to networking and, really building relationships, and, these things, nothing bad comes from it.
Agreed. Well, Roger, thank you once more. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and hear a little bit of your story. And I'm sure there's lots that we didn't cover, but what we did cover was tremendously interesting, educational, and insightful. So thank you again.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for having me, Aaron. And I definitely appreciate you inviting me on today.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.